I'm Lisa Senecal.
Hi, and I'm Maya May.
And Where Speaking starts right now. Hey, everybody.
Here we are.
Yeah, here we are. And already November 2nd is just around the corner. So tonight we're going to be talking Virginia governor's race because terrifyingly that has moved from lean Dem to a toss-up between McAuliffe and Youngkin. Yeah, it's disappointing to see. We're gonna make sure that people in Virginia come to understand who Youngkin really is. That he's a Trumpkin.
Yeah, and not just people in Virginia, but people across the country. This is a race now that everybody should have their eye on because what's happening in Virginia is going to predict kind of what's going to happen around the country when it comes to these races. So, gotta be eyes on the prize.
Yeah, it definitely is. And fortunately, tonight we have the perfect guest to come and talk to us about this. Rachel Bitecofer, she's a political scientist and strategist, and she is the founder of STRIKE PAC.
Which I love that name.
It's like love that name. Yes.
I love a good pun. I'm like, STRIKE PAC. That's what we need.
Yes. It's so good, and it is the perfect name for a PAC that Rachel would be running. So really excited to talk with her coming up really soon.
Yes. And we have questions from our viewers. So this is something that we're doing a bit more of. We want to engage with you more. So you can always tweet us your questions at #We'reSpeaking. You can also email us at we'respeaking@lincolnproject.us. So we're going to do our best to answer some of these questions. So if we could get one of these up here. From Mary R. Okay, it looks like Trump is determined to support election deniers in 2022 and is planning on running for 2024. Help! Is there any chance for a third party? Lisa.
A third party is not help. So let's not encourage third parties right now. There may come a time when a new party can emerge to take the place of the Republican Party after they've stopped lighting themselves on fire and they have allowed themselves to completely burn out as a party. But for the time being, we need everybody who is sickened, disgusted, deeply troubled by the current Republican Party to be coalescing around the Democratic candidates. We need to make sure that the Republicans do not take the House or the Senate in 22 and governor's races in the meantime, like in Virginia. So I know it's tempting to want another alternative, but we don't want votes getting pulled away from the Democratic candidates.
Yeah. We'll probably talk about this more with Rachel as well, but eyes on the prize. Keep talking about this. And I just want to hammer that point home that we cannot diffuse our energies right now. And so these are discussions that we can have at a later date when we talk about third parties. But right now, we really do, as Lisa said, need to focus on the Democratic candidates that are most likely to win. And we need to work on our messaging, which is something that we're also going to talk about with Rachel. So I'm excited to
save democracy. Then we can think about political parties. For now, there's only one functioning political party in the United States. That's the Democrats. Vote Democrat.
Yep.
Save the democracy. Yes, okay, please. Next question. Bill P. How can we heal so that the democratic experiment of government in this amazing country can become more effective and productive for all?
I love this question. I love these kind of questions. And First of all, I think what we're seeing a lot right now is the GOP is weaponizing community members against each other. We're seeing a lot of this with people outside of schools, anti-mask protesters shouting people down. It's a little bit crazy.
Chasing children.
Chasing children, exactly. And so if we can't come together as a country and realize that we are all in the same boat, in the same country, and that healing is really only going to come through conversation. We have to be able to talk to each other and engage with each other. And the holidays are coming up, and this is going to be the first time that a lot of people are going to be spending those holidays with friends and family again, now that enough people are vaccinated that is going to happen. So guess what, y'all? Time to have those tough conversations, because that's where it really starts, at home, with those. Yep.
Yeah, and we're not going to have healing until we have accountability. And whether it's the January 6th Commission or criminal charges where those are appropriate civil lawsuits that are going on, we need to have real accountability for the people who have attempted to overturn the results of a legitimate presidential election in this country. They had an insurrection. They didn't just try to have one. They had an insurrection. And we had members of the House and Senate fully in support of not certifying the results of the election. So yeah, first we have to hold people accountable. That's the antibiotic. And then we can move forward with the healing, but it's not going to happen until then.
Yeah, exactly. I think we might have time for one more question before we get to Rachel. So here we are. Jennifer R. asks, are there any actions besides donating that we can be doing right now to prepare for the 2022 elections? Lisa, this is a question we get a lot.
It is. And for those of us or those of you who listen to us a lot or follow us on social media, we just beat these drums over and over again. There are things you can be doing right now. You can, yes, be donating, but volunteer as an election worker, get trained. We want to make sure we have non-crazy people working the polls and people with integrity who are going to do this the right way. So yes, please become an election worker, help register people to vote. And as you were saying before, Maya, have those tough conversations with people and make sure people shake them and make sure they know what the hell is going on.
Yes. You have to ask, we have the numbers. So even with gerrymandering, and Rachel mentioned this earlier, so we're actually going to talk about that as well. We have the numbers, the redistricting and the gerrymandering, it's scary, but we actually have the numbers even with all of that. And I'm going to ask her to explain more about that, because it is important to hear, because we don't want people giving up. That's what we definitely do not want to have. We don't want people thinking that the vote doesn't matter, that it matters, and it matters now more than ever to stay engaged. Your vote definitely counts. So we need to make sure that everybody is registered. That needs to be every weekly checking to see if you're registered, if your friends and family are registered, as long as they're voting blue. I'm kidding. Everybody, sort of.
And we're going to have Rachel join us in just a minute. But first, we want to take a look at the new Lincoln Project ad. There are an awful lot of people who don't seem to understand who Glenn Youngkin is, including people in the state of Virginia. So take a look at this.
Glenn Youngkin. He is against Virginia schools deciding it's safer to wear masks, even facing a dangerous COVID outbreak.
I believe there should not be mask mandates in Virginia.
But when it comes to the safety of his own kids, he sends them to an out-of-state private school that requires masks for almost $40,000 a year. That's Glenn Youngkin. He cares about his own kids, but not ours. Glenn Youngkin. There's a reason he's Donald Trump's candidate.
The Lincoln Project paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising.
And
there he is.
With that, we have Rachel Bitecofer joining us tonight. She is a political scientist and strategist, a self-described badass data girl, and we will absolutely endorse that description, and the founder of STRIKE PAC, which is working to modernize the Democrats' messaging, and I'd love to hear the definition of modernize.
Yes.
Well, great. I'm so excited to be here. And yeah, it is nothing short of a total, it's like moving from agricultural to industrial age modernization that they require. A lot of the focus, thus far and what people see in the public is on messaging, because it is such a huge component of winning elections. And as I argue, Democrats and Republicans do not campaign or a message or electioneer actually in the same ways. That's one of the asymmetries between the parties. And the Democratic Party is still running a model of elections before the Republicans innovated into what's really known as referendum campaigning, but I think is better described now as branding, because that referendum was like a stage in that evolution to get to what they do, which is branding. And their branding operation is not so much painting a positive picture of the GOP and branding its platform in a positive way that people would want, right? Their branding is almost exclusively focused on disqualifying their opponent in the eyes of voters that could be swayed one way or the other. And then that we could talk about those voters and who they are and where they're going specifically. But in any case, like what Democrats do is we have policy conversations, right? Here's policy A, policy B, and this is our positions. They don't like those positions, but that stuff is it's designed for a saner time in our political system. Number one. Number two, and I think this is really great that the Facebook whistleblower testimony has been such news, because one of the main things that she says in that is, look, they figured out from analytics that what makes people click more and stay on is negative emotive stuff, right? And it's just a behavioral fact. You can't measure it so well unless you're using experimental survey designs that the respondents don't know about. In survey data, voters are going to tell you about their best you. They're not going to tell you about their real you, right? And most people don't want to think of themselves as tribal or even partisan, right, especially people who say they're independent, right? And that's why that pool of independent is not 30-40% of the electorate, hence why you can't have a successful third party win, and just be a spoiler in third party scenarios. But that middle of the electorate is really only about 10%, and those are people who are what we call pure indies. And what makes them, most of them, my mother-in-law and father-in-law excluded, is lack of interest in politics. Frankly, they don't follow. They feel civically obligated to vote, but they're not super into current affairs or politics or the news, right? So they're very subject to what we call these national tides, right? So we know the midterm effect exists, but understanding the mechanics that drive it is really super important, especially if you're trying to thwart it, which is what this entire side, the not GOP side, will be doing in 22. We're working against massively predictive fundamentals that break advantage of the Republicans. And so when we think about, understanding what makes a midterm effect, right? And generally speaking, it's a sense in that electorate of, the election theme, and we serve this up to the Republicans very readily, is usually about the performance of the incumbent, right? We let it be that instead of what they do, which is a referendum on our brand, and then they sully the brand with socialism and other things like defund the police or CRT or whatever they think might resonate, right? So what we do is very asymmetrical in terms of getting people excited to vote and persuading them to vote based, in that GOP style, which is an emotive persuasion. It's not about policy arguments. It's about, look at these guys, they're a hot mess, so you better vote for us, right? And I think Democrats are making like little infantile steps towards nationalization. We certainly have seen competent campaigns waged in messaging from Terry McAuliffe and Gavin Newsom, especially once the Newsom campaign started to focus on the referendum and not Newsom's record, right?
Right.
So, STRIKE PAC is about getting, that tree of the Democratic electoral system, which is rooted, and then the tree is like the whole system. So everything that they've ever tried, the interest groups, the super PACs, everything off this trunk. And what I'm saying is, no, guys, you got to get rid of the whole damn tree, pull it up by its roots. Throw the soil down and understand that, in the system that we're in now, we have what we have to work with, and we are in a crisis, right? And I'm so excited to be on Lincoln tonight, because I know like as a behavioralist, how hard it might be to be conservatively inclined or maybe even moderately inclined, and then be watching in real life action Democratic policy get made, right? So I just want to remind people,
frustrating.
like everything about Biden, from the Afghanistan withdrawal to, big infrastructure spending and human infrastructure, whatever it is, just remember it compares to budding fascism, right? And we really cannot get distracted by trees, because the forest is not only more important right now, it is literally on fire.
Yep.
That's exactly it. And so when the forest is on fire, and I want to back up a little bit, because you talk about messaging, you talk about branding. We live in a world now where we have TikTok and we have Instagram, and that's delivering a lot of our information, and people are used to rapid. So can you point out some examples or of ads that you feel are more aligned with a strategy that actually works? And as you said in an earlier interview, I think you said juices the messaging was how you put it.
Right. Yeah. So, this is a startup operation. I'm building Strike PAC. Number one, it's the only super PAC run by 3 women. So that's kind of history making, go girls. And I think it's funny that it's the super PAC that's by far going to come out with the biggest swinging balls, and there's not a dude on it. Not to take anything away from Rick and the boys. So what I would say is, for people to understand about Strike PAC and about what I'm arguing in terms of the messaging is, we want to come in and put them on defense. And that's why I like this Lincoln Project Virginia ad, because our problem in Virginia, our problem in 22 is, and this is what fires up my theoretical and my research stuff that got me into the national stage, because I transitioned into electoral politics because democracy is on fire, but I used to be a political scientist and an analyst. What motivated, like why I could sleep at night for 2017, 2018 is I knew there's emotion called negative partisanship, or political science term is effective polarization, which is fear and hate of the other side, right? Increasingly, especially on the left, it's fear of the other side. But the right fear has been there for a long time, because the media system stokes it and is designed to cultivate it and turn it into fire, right? So when we think about these upcoming midterms, what we're really concerned with is, will the people who voted in 2018 still be freaked out enough to show up? And given that the Democratic electoral system will not be designed to stoke that turnout, and that turnout, of course, is also that left-leaning independent coalition, because they have a huge turnout swing, especially in off-year cycles, because they're not as passionate as partisans. So that when you think about that voter erosion, I think people tend to think of minorities, and it is true, right? Not in Virginia so much. The Black vote is very stable across cycles. But really where you see that erosion is young people and these politically independent left-leaners, because they only get tuned in when stuff is super intense and salient. And if it's not there, you have to basically go in and make it artificial, right? So the Virginia ad that Lincoln's put out is about, number one, it kind of slaps the GOP across the face, because it goes after a longstanding norm of not attacking other people's families. Instead of like a verbal comment about, well, don't your kids go to a private school? This is an ad that uses the family photo of the Youngkin family, right? And I like it because, we've got this other party that is increasingly violating every norm. And this is, I don't want a rule of law norm violated, but this is one I think it's appropriate to violate, because Youngkin is such a hypocrite, right? He's saying, send I want to come in and take control of Virginia and put your kids at risk. And so my own 2 ads, like examples, to go back to the original question, the examples of like what I'm talking about, you guys can see this if you go onto our Strike PAC YouTube page. We have all of our launch packet videos, and every one of them is constructed in a way to teach people, like, okay, it's not just about nationalized messaging, which would be a big leap for Democrats, right? But it's how it's done as well, right? So it's not, I think like we see baby steps with like Youngkin is Trump and Trump is Youngkin framing, but it's got to go beyond that. And what it's got to do is it's got to make people fearful for themselves, because most of the advertising on the left is focused for because we care about others and we want everyone to care about others. That's not how it works. People care about them, right? So if you look at the Republican advertising, it's always about they're coming for your shit, not somebody else's shit, right?
Right. And I think the Republicans do a good job of making individuals, the deluge of emails that I get because I'm on Trump lists and, all this other stuff, they come very personally at the person receiving. You have the power to do this. You're important. And I think the Democrats tend to feel they feel fearful, but instead of that motivating them to take action, I think they end up kind of pulling into their shells and not getting involved. So what is it that's going to is really going to break through that combination of being really fearful and feeling overwhelmed by it, and then the numbing that I think an awful lot of people feel at this point, that there has just been so much awful for so long, and it all, we had a memo come out planning the freaking insurrection,
right?
And we didn't even talk about it for half a day. So how do you get people to really become those engaged, especially those kind of soft Republicans and the left-leaning independents? What gets them out to the polls in Virginia?
I hate to contradict you on your own show, but the fact is, there's no difference on emotive behavior on the left and the right. There's an infrastructure on the right that's been cultivated with billions of dollars and grown to feed it. So therefore, it's more centralized, more visible, more virulent, right? But in terms of psychology, a liberal is just as subjective to a negative fear emotive ad as a Republican would be, right? It's not like one gets empowered. And I just want to be very clear about that.
I'm glad that you are incredibly I'm glad that you are incredibly clear about that, because you talk a lot about data, and this is actual data. This is how humans function, and we're never going to win if we try to go against human nature. And so I love that you are, with your PAC, making sure that we focus on the data. How can we do more of that as a country and leverage tech for our betterment? How can we do this?
And if we do have the data, why are the Democrats ignoring it? Because it's theoretical.
That's a good question, right? It's not an intentional thing. And I always describe what's going on in the left in terms of its electioneering. Number one, it's powered a lot by confirmation bias. Everybody is. And that's why my heart is so soft. There's two reasons for the never Trump world, right? Number one, the hardest thing to overcome is personal ideology. And so anybody that voted for Joe Biden in 2016, that came from the right, is a hero, like a small micro hero, but a hero, because they've overcome something in political behavior that we know is almost insurmountable, right? So that's number one. But number two, it's about with the way that we're communicating with voters, the way I like to sum it up for Republicans is they talk to the electorate that exists, right? It's not a nice piece of clay, just flat out. They understand Americans are civically stupid, right? We are civically malnourished. It is we are now discovering actually that this wasn't just a chronic condition like I manage with fibromyalgia, which is what I thought it was for a long time. It's more like stage 4 cancer at this point, right? And so we've got what we've got to work with, and we can invest and endeavor to improve that, and we absolutely must, or we'll be dooming our posterity to the same fate that we're dealing with now if we survive it. But the problem is you don't have informed, engaged electorates, and these drop-off Republicans that are squeamy because they keep hearing all these bad headlines about Biden. The exact right thing to do to those people is to go back in and remind them of the stakes, remind them of the forest, so they're not thinking so much about those trees. And then again, that coalition that showed up in 2018 that didn't come in 2014 that I predicted with my modeling, we must make those people come back. Because here, let me leave you guys with something that it should make you feel hopeful. we can absolutely win in Virginia and in 2022. We have the electorate that we need. If we are to modify this electoral approach and deploy it large scale, and I'm talking about millions of dollars of investment, we can win, because we have, if we just replicate 2018, we would hold the House and the Senate. Okay. So like, we know we can do that because we've already done it. Now it's a matter of understanding, how should I go in? And the messaging is one revolution that I'm arguing for, but tactical deployment and like strategy in the contest is a whole nother part of modernization that I strongly suspect we need if we're going to.
I think we might have lost her.
Percent of Republicans and their leaders that show up in a midterm, it's going to be probably 47%, right? Versus the percent of Democrats and left-leaning independents that show up, that determine these contests.
Nope. I think we're
a little bit of a connection issue with Rachel, but she's leaving us with some very positive news, is that we can do it because we've done it before. It's going to take strategic messaging, nationalized messaging across the board, and an investment in that. And so that's what we're here for, is to continue to sound this alarm. So thank you so much for being with us here tonight, Rachel. Please check out Rachel's PAC. It's STRIKEPAC.com. Great name, data-driven messaging, and we are so grateful for the work that you are doing, and we hope to have you back on the show when you can.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
It's a great pleasure, and I just urge people to go watch those ads and learn how to do good messaging.
Wonderful. Thank you for your work.
Thanks, Rachel. I feel hopeful. I think I like what she said when she said we're civically stupid.
Yeah, we're civically stupid, and we're stupidly disengaged. And you know, you and I talk about this a lot. I understand why people disengage. It's hard to continue to pay attention to the shit that's going on all the time. It does not feel like a healthy thing to be doing, but this is one of those times that we have to set aside what we'd like and do what we need to do, because 100%. It's that important.
And for educating ourselves, don't forget we have the Franklin Project that we do work with that has all sorts of materials about how to engage in these conversations and to have a better understanding of civics. Maybe we've forgotten our civic education that we had in high school, or maybe we didn't have it at all. And so it's important to do that together as adults. We can revisit school. It's back to school. It's back to school time is what it is.
It would be good if everybody remembered again what our civic education was, and that it's not, participating in our democracy is not unlike getting vaccinated. You don't just do it because it's important for yourself, and it is personally an obligation for you to vote as an individual. You do it because it's important for our society, for our democracy. So we all have to make sure that we are getting out there, and holidays coming up, having those conversations that are a little dicey. Maybe save it for pie. Let people get, I don't know, I was going to say let people get liquored up a little bit, but that's
no. Maybe this is
talk really early.
Liquor-free Thanksgiving, y'all. Our tensions are high. All right. Tensions are very high. So let's keep those discussions over like cider, like apple cider, not hard cider.
Liquor-free air travel and liquor-free holidays.
Exactly. We have an ad coming up, so I want you to check that out, and then we're going to come back from that.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Location for the following passenger. Passenger Trump one. You know him? Trump one. You know him?
They deleted everything in Colorado. The whole election's deleted.
I'm in a job where you can go on cable TV and blame somebody for everything. And and it's never my fault, right?
The characterization that the Democrats have made about the Border Patrol using them as whipping people coming across the border is false. They were simply maneuvering horses.
They're actually changing societally the whole country.
They want to demoralize the military, close the churches, destroy your faith in the American system, and then here they're going to come with the socialist program to run your life from cradle to grave, daylight to dark.
That's not representative government, ladies and gentlemen. That is behind closed doors, smoke-filled room, in this case not cigars, probably marijuana.
Shut the government down because the real world knows how to run without the government. We do not need the government.
Last week, Joe Biden speaks at the United Nations and says he's going to restore our relationship with our allies, as if it wasn't good under President Trump. It was great under President Trump.
Nature abhors a moron. Let's don't be moronic.
Don't be moronic, y'all. Don't be. Wow. There it is. The circus. The circus that could be in control of our country if we don't get out and vote. So if nothing instills fear in you, that should right there. Every week, a little more of that.
It should. Yeah. And the important thing about the Lincoln Project putting together this last week of the Republican Party every week is to make sure there are so many people who want to call Trump the former guy and want to believe that we've moved on from that. Mm-hmm. And people need to be slapped in the face constantly with the crazy and the downright evil that is happening right now. Yeah. And it's unpleasant to look at. It's unpleasant to listen to at times. Yeah. Oh my God. God bless her for having the courage to sing in public.
Wow.
But holy cow.
Yeah.
So speaking of doing things in public.
Yes, we did stuff in public. We saw each other this past weekend, didn't we? Where were we?
We did. We saw each other, and we saw a bunch of other women from the Lincoln Project in Washington, D.C. for the Women's March this past Saturday. Mm-hmm. It was amazing and inspiring. And, Rachel gave us some hope at the end of that interview. Mm-hmm. The march gave me hope to see not just women, see people coming out the way they did. We can organize. We can get out. People do care. We just need to get it motivated.
Yeah, there were thousands upon thousands of people there, and we got some good video and some clips, and so we'd love for you to check out what we saw.
Make ourselves feel safe as people think. If you don't feel safe having access to your own body and your own rights, then it doesn't feel exactly like home, and I want us to make it feel like home for many.
Yes. What you saw were hundreds of thousands of people. It was what it felt like in the midst of it, but really, truly thousands of people and quite a few women from the Lincoln Project. We all joined together to stand up against what is really an authoritarian creep by the GOP. And so it was really important that we came together to speak up against that. And so I feel incredibly motivated after this weekend, because quite honestly, it was like, are people too exhausted to continue to speak up? And actually they are not. We found out that we still have energy. It feels like we're in the final stretch of this, and we got this, and we're going to motivate each other, and we're going to inspire each other through this next part of the process. That is what we are here for. So
we are. And if those images move too quickly to be able to see the t-shirts that the women from the Lincoln Project had on, those words on the back said, fuck around and find out. And that's the attitude we need to have constantly for the next 13 months through the midterms.
And then some,
the
probably.
Republicans are fucking around. They're going to find out, and we're going to be the ones to show them.
Yep.
Two other people with that attitude are Tara Setmayer and Rick Wilson, who have the breakdown on Tuesday and Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you check them out tomorrow night.
Yes, and then we will be back next Wednesday. So be sure to check us out on the socials to find out what we are going to be talking about. And follow Lisa at LC Senecal and myself at Maya on Stage. And then we also have our LPTV Twitter. So find us out there, converse with us, engage with us. We love to hear from you. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.